Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
All right, well, welcome, plant people. From the normal pod squad, it's just me and Ray, but we are joined today by a titan of Kentucky horticulture and agriculture, Dr. Cindy Finneseth, from previous Hort Council fame, and now of the horticulture department at University of Kentucky. Cindy, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Making me a little nervous saying I'm a titan and famous. Whew, a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brett comes in smooth, unlike Alexis. I mean, when Alexis brings the energy, she comes in and just, that zing energy. Brett just kind of slides in there smooth.
Anybody have any? Well, did anybody have any trouble with any of the rain, flooding, any kind of stuff like that?
No, not flooding. No, there's a lot of trees down in central Kentucky where my county's at. In Bourbon County on my drive over from Scott County, just lots of trees, and just getting reports from farms of several of our people had to kind of dip out of programs because they were having cleanup done on their farms. So I guess just the wet soil in combination with some pretty strong straight line winds and a little bit of damage here and there. Hopefully you guys fared pretty well, Cindy and Brett.
Yeah, some flooding on campus. Had a hard time getting to the farm yesterday because we had flooding over by the football stadium.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah,
I was real surprised. It came down pretty fast and hard here in the morning, and then cleared off, and it was a gorgeous day out at the farm in the afternoon.
Yeah. Cleared out pretty quick, but we were just talking earlier about the moisture is keeping things growing. I mean, it's late June, but we've had some cool nights here recently. It feels more like September evenings or early May, but my goodness, my lawn, I'm typically this time of year mowing every 14 days, every 2 weeks. Now I'm mowing every 6 days. So we've had just enough intervals of rain and lower temperatures at night to keep those cool season grasses growing. So yeah, everybody's out there mowing. It's keeping things going for sure.
Well, I have a question just to start us off. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, who knows what we're going to end up talking about.
Who knows?
But
we don't know.
Is there a plant that you now like or love, but you had to learn to like or love it? Could be ornamental, could be a vegetable, could be any number of things. God. But you're like, I like it now, but I had to learn to like it or learn to love it. Or maybe you just
forced to love it due to proximity, or somebody gave you a gift plant that you just were like, oh man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of scenarios here. Wow.
I can think of one. So in my research plot, I have wild quinine, and it was a plant I'd never grown before. And when I first grew it, I was like, man, that is ugly. And it was scratchy, and the leaves are so thick and scabrous. And I was like, ugh. And then we started harvesting it for a cut flower. And man, that thing lasts on the counter. So the vase life is amazing. It's it's not super showy, but kind of a creamy white flower. And so that would be mine here recently, that I just didn't really like it at first. And I thought, man, I didn't, have much hopes. But after seeing it as an actual cut flower in the vase, and in arrangements, I have to say it's one of my recommendations now for folks who are interested in kind of low maintenance, for a cutting garden. Yeah. And for cut flower growers, I think I'm pretty solid proponent of this crop now. Yeah.
That's a great shout.
On the team.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, Brett, I guess I recently gave a talk at a garden club, did a little presentation, but we got off topic, as I tend to do. But talking about hydrangeas, when I first started my career in extension long time ago, many decades ago, it was more common to have just standard hydrangeas, smooth hydrangeas or whatever. But now with the rise in popularity and almost complete takeover of the ever blooming hydrangeas, I am now team hydrangea, whereas before they were so temperamental, so prone to winter kill or issues or bloom color issues and change. They were very inconsistent. And I didn't recommend those in my first, I was not a big fan of those in my first years of extension, but now it is one of the absolute best plants if you want a good, consistent, showy bloomer. but it's hydrangeas, the new ever blooming. I mean, my goodness, I've cut those things to the ground, 10 inches above the ground. And if the root mass is healthy, they just grow back up and they bloom, and they're just so tough with very little maintenance. But I would have to call out hydrangeas. Used to be one of my least favorite. Now it's one of my most favorites.
Yeah, I think for me it would be probably dogwoods. I was like never a dog. I like hated them. I thought they were like I thought
Gosh,
they were
Brad, that
I thought they
sounds
were old.
strong.
I thought
Hated
they were
them.
old lady trees. I didn't hate them, but I was just like, I thought they were old lady trees. And maybe they
Hey, be
are. Maybe
careful there.
maybe I'm. Well, if we know any old ladies or ever have them on the
Favorite
pod, we'll be
plant,
careful. But
but they get in trouble.
but like we have one really old, pretty old one in our backyard that's a pink blooming, and then another one that's white. And there's a really nice like selection of trees around the neighborhood that with slightly different colors and stuff. And I just come to appreciate them much more over the years than I used to.
I do have a love hate with. I mean, I do love them. I'm from the Eastern Foothills, so naturally I love redbuds and dogwoods. But that's a tree we commonly get a lot of questions on with the powdery mildew and anthracnose and summer scorch on those guys. But even with all of that, when I see a good example of a dogwood out there, it's a glorious sight to see in the landscape, especially the older ones that have done well for whatever reason through care and proper planting and maintenance. But yeah, I kind of have a love hate with dogwoods too. I love the tree, but they have some typical problems if you're not really careful about site selection and putting those things in the right place. So yeah, it's
yeah. I think it's just one of those that over time
kind of grew on you.
Yeah, I mean they did. They grow slowly, but grew on me. I guess that's the case. But well, that's enough of my silly questions. But what I wanted to originally, we had talked to Cindy about maybe talking about houseplant propagation, and we may get to that, or we may just have to schedule a follow up that she'll come back on and talk to us about then. But you have a very interesting position at the university and in the horticulture department, and we'd love to hear about kind of what that is, how you've been shaping it, and the directions you're taking with it, and the stuff that you're excited about or that you're working on or thinking about. We can start there, and if we end up at houseplants, great. If we don't, that's okay too. We'll put that as a teaser.
Sure, sure. So yeah, this was a new position in the Department of Horticulture. So we were talking earlier about it's been just about 2 years that I've been in this role in the department here at the College of Ag, and it is community horticulture, which that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's great because there is a lot of latitude there and it can encompass a lot of different things. But that's hard too, because it covers a lot of territory. So kind of what I've been doing a lot of is working with small scale growers, particularly in urban areas, and then working with beginning growers because we have this constant, interest in people wanting to get into horticulture production. And just to be clear, so I'm talking community horticulture, not consumer horticulture. So I don't really work with homeowners. It's really more pre-commercial and commercial growers who want to have horticulture operations. And so I may be the first touch for people. Other folks that I work with who really focus in on beginning growers, we kind of tag team and work to help people who are interested, whether it is food production, ornamental production. We do get some value added questions from folks who are interested in that. So that's kind of where I've kind of started. And then, like I said, urban horticulture, that's kind of an area I've been in, particularly because that's small scale. And there are a lot of crops that people can grow small scale production. I had mentioned some of the cut flower work earlier. So that's a production system that can be very profitable at very small scale. There are other, fruits and vegetables that can be high production, profitable, small scale operations, which doesn't really matter where you are. You could be in an urban area, you could be in a very rural area, but kind of more limited by scale necessarily than some other things. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Gotten to work with a lot of folks that I had known in previous positions, but also getting to meet a lot of new growers, people new to extension, which is super exciting. That we're able to gateway a lot of people to learn about the extension service who really didn't know we existed and what kind of things that we can provide really at basically no charge to Kentucky residents because of the extension service.
It sounds like a really interesting position to me because I find a lot of joy or working just personally with that group that's getting ready to stage up or getting ready to be producers, for the purposes of production for profit. But would you say, in your 2 years, and I know you've got lots of other horticulture experience, but people that come to you now in this specific position, would you say that they have some experience and they've decided to level up and produce for profit? Or do you get people coming to you that say, I have zero experience, but I want to make some money and do this thing? Which would you, or do you kind of get a blend of both, would you say?
Yeah, it's pretty much across the spectrum because of my involvement in the Kentucky horticulture industry, sort of historically.
Mm-hmm.
I get people too, even that are very experienced maybe in one thing and they decide they want to add a new enterprise. And so they'll contact me just simply because they know my name and they have my telephone number and they'll say, hey, I want to talk about adding in blueberries. I've never done that before. And so may have a conversation with them. And it's interesting where they start because
Mm-hmm.
they know kind of production, they know some of the
Okay.
basics.
Yeah.
So it's a very different conversation. And I think that's what's the most interesting about what I do is that conversation is different with every single person. So it
Mm-hmm.
may be the person who's just, they're moving from out west because our land prices are less expensive here. And so they've bought a farm and they want to know what to do with it. And so, we may talk through some things, some just basic things, and they've never grown anything at all. So very different conversation with that person versus, somebody who's maybe been dabbling a little bit, maybe they've done a little farmer's market, but they're thinking, oh, I really want to scale up. I want to go all in on this. And, how do I do that? And so really each person, their sort of pathway to me is different and kind of where we go from there is different. Sometimes, if it's a person doing vegetables and they want to get into wholesale, that's really kind of outside my area. So I'll refer them to other folks, whether it's on the marketing side, and I send them over to CCD with Brent, or I'm with, sorry, Brett. Or if it's somebody fruit and I send them to Brent, or a vegetable and I send them over to Rachel, we have this whole team that works. And so a lot of times I'm the kind of first contact with them. And then depending on where we are and where they are, they may take a different route to get the customized experience that they need to be successful.
So you do a
And
lot of traffic control, it sounds like, as far as referral and directing people, which is half
yeah,
the battle, especially if you're new, and even for experienced growers that may need specific, help with like irrigation or a specific topic, or like you said, wholesale market. So yeah.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. And that's funny you say that. And maybe I'll start describing it that way. Is sometimes I do feel that way that it's like, nope, over
Yeah.
here, getting people to the right person.
I just had
So,
a
yeah.
flashback to red light, green light in gym class, and
Oh
just
yeah.
trying to stop and
Stop.
going over, over the handlebars, so to speak.
Well,
Well, one of the things you mentioned a couple of times in different contexts is this scale thing, small scale, and I think I think about the scale that we do things
Scale in Kentucky is
across
interesting.
a lot of
mhm,
different
for sure.
and even just the scale that we think about the way we provide services, or the scale that we think about politics, or whatever it may be. But I think the one of the things that the small scale thing, it's something that USDA I think has grappled with over the last 10 years or so. And so can you, when you say small scale, even within that, is there like some diversity of there's small, and then there's medium small, and that sort of thing? Or kind of what are you seeing there?
Sure. I think they actually call it micro, right? Like a micro farm. So what's really interesting, this whole lexicon, and maybe we should come up with some standard definitions because you're right. Each agency kind of
Mhm.
scales differently. So, USDA NRCS, so Natural Resources Conservation Service, they will recognize a farm very much less than an acre. So you can have a farm number, you can be recognized as an operation on like an eighth of an acre. And so
Mhm.
like talking square footage versus acres, up to, kind of the beginning grower who may have access to a lot of land, hundreds of acres, but yet, they're starting out small. So we may say, oh, you're interested in strawberries. don't start out with 12 acres, even though you have the land. Maybe start with a quarter of an acre till you understand like the
Mm-hmm.
production system. You've got your markets together. You've figured everything out. So I think some of it is really land access, and some of it is more mindset around like, hey, small scale. Maybe it is an economics thing. Maybe you are pre-commercial and you haven't made sort of that magic threshold of $1,000 yet. And so, yeah, I would call you small scale, even though your farm, you may live on a farm that's hundreds of acres. I would still consider that small scale. The ones that we typically think of small scale, of somebody in an urban environment that has a quarter acre lot, obviously small scale. But I think too, kind of that economic, kind of that beginning grower idea of, we hope that they start at a smaller scale so that it's more manageable. They can really refine things. They can, really figure out their markets, really figure out what they're doing, what resonates with them, what they can be successful at before we start talking about scaling up. And before, whether that is scaling up from a standpoint of lots of different markets, diversifying the markets, or it is, I'm going to go from this quarter of an acre and I'm going up to 7 acres next year, whatever that looks like. So I don't know that I really answered your question, or if I kind of danced around it. I don't have a good definition for small scale because it's kind of a little bit different, based on who you're talking to.
And the
But I tend
crop,
to,
yeah. I mean, like you said, a quarter acre of strawberries is significantly different than a quarter acre of tobacco, or
oh, for sure.
a cow calf pear on an acre. Like the definition across, enterprises is so different. Or quarter acre of microgreens. We were talking microgreens this morning. So yeah, it's very relative to the crop and the intensity of production. And then you start saying words like, oh, how about external labor to the farm? And then it gets really interesting really quick. Yeah, when you're talking about these different enterprises. So it's scale has always been kind of
Yeah,
fascinating to me.
I think one of the things I was getting at that you touched on great is just like the inclusivity of size, and that especially as Ray said, with these intensive systems, an acre has very different meaning in these different systems. That if an acre of tomatoes are under plastic, and I had to manage it myself, makes my skin crawl or something. But an acre of corn, you turn the combine a couple of times and you're done. But um, what about you mentioned the urban agriculture thing, and I know that was something that maybe, I don't know how long ago it is. It's a dangerous game now to try to remember how long ago something was, but within the last 10 or 15 years, it seemed like there was a new acknowledgement of urban agriculture as this important new field. And so is that mostly that urban agriculture interest mostly happening like in the Louisville, Lexington areas, or is there other places that we might not think about where you're seeing some of that?
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing that has a myriad of definitions, right? Is what is urban, and
Hmm.
I tend to think of urban really as kind of being within the city limits. So in Paris, I would, most people would be like, Paris, that's not really urban. But yeah, it really is when you're talking about like a city, a municipality sort of thing. Because the challenges are very different in kind of a municipal area versus a rural area. Thinking
Hmm.
about like planning and zoning, for
Yeah.
example. You could
Mhm.
be out in Bourbon County and you do whatever you want to do. But if you're in the Paris city limits, you're very limited. So I tend to think of it more of that. And we've got what are recognized as these micropolitan areas. So if you look at the urban farming initiative here at the university, we list places that people would be like, oh, Elizabethtown, London, those aren't urban areas. It would only be Lexington, Louisville. Um, so I guess if you look at some of the kind of federal definitions, yeah, probably it would be just, Lexington Metro, Louisville Metro. But like when I think of it, I think of, those micropolitan areas too. If, Northern Kentucky, clearly urban, Paducah, areas, Owensboro, some of those larger cities, Hopkinsville, I would consider those urban areas for sure. And it has been interesting. We're so fortunate in Kentucky that we have such a, high number of farmers markets typically those are going to be in what you would consider an urban area. So I think that's a great gateway for a lot of people who are interested in having kind of more of an urban operation or smaller scale operation. Very low barrier to entry. They can get in, they can, test out that market channel to see, do they like having a business, or really, do they just want to be a gardener and give away produce, or do they want to truly have a business? So I think that, that's been a really powerful way for people to test out a little bit, where they think, well, I don't have the luxury of 200 acres. I don't have a farm, but I still want to grow something and I want to sell it. And so I think there are mechanisms in Kentucky for people to do that, whether it's direct to consumer from Facebook marketing, or it is a farm stand, a cooler farm stand. I use that loosely. Maybe it's a cooler at the end of their driveway, or a little, setup at the end of their drive.
Honesty stand or whatever, these
Yeah,
self-serve
for
stands. I
sure.
see those pop
For
up a
sure.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
little
yeah.
stands. Yeah.
So I
One
think,
brief listener's note. Cindy mentioned several names of towns, Paris and London. And if you're thinking to yourself, this crazy we do have listeners outside of Kentucky. This crazy person saying that Paris isn't urban. I don't know what Paris, Kentucky. Some would
You
question that.
mentioned
So
a lot
yeah,
of European cities there. Yeah.
I did, didn't
Yeah.
I?
we have lots of cities.
Versailles,
There's
Versailles. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Harry.
We do have several listeners in the UK, so they're like, I'm confused.
Wait, London's a pretty big town.
Yeah, but that's an interesting take on it, though, is that if you're dealing with metro issues, then you're a metropolitan producer or a metro area producer. So that's an interesting take on that, because you're dealing with planning and zoning and, of course, restricted lot space sizes and things. But it's amazing to me how inventive people are, especially with the rise of protected agriculture, all these polytunnels and heated and unheated, protected ag kind of structures. What people can do on smaller urban environments, and what they can produce, and some of the neat sales systems that we have in Kentucky, like CSAs or any of the direct consumer sales avenues. And you kind of alluded to it with the rise of social media and different ways of getting the word out. But it's always amazing to me how inventive people are and how much they can produce given the amount of space that they have, even though it's, maybe smaller.
Sure.
So it's pretty
Sure.
cool.
Well, and microgreens, you mentioned that before. That's something that people have setups in their basement or spare bedroom, and
Yeah.
they can produce a lot. Same thing with mushrooms.
Mhm.
There's some folks in Kentucky who have really nice operations on a very small footprint. And so I think that our growers are very clever about what they're doing and really maximizing the space that they have available to them. And you mentioned that about polytunnels and protected ag, and conversation I was having this morning, that I want to be sure that we hit this, because this is, you guys probably know this is my soapbox, but people who say, oh, you can't have, produce year round in Kentucky. That's clearly not true. We have growers who have produce year round. And so maybe they're using different types of production systems, and maybe the volumes aren't quite the same. And, you're obviously not going to get locally grown watermelon in February, but
Yeah.
our growers are really good managers, and they're using technologies to have produce, truly 12 months of the year. So,
Well,
shout
just
out
telling
to our
you, I was
growers.
eating a Cherokee purple tomato from one of our local farms almost 3 weeks ago. Beautiful. I mean, and it's more high tunnel than greenhouse, but yeah, it always amazes me when I'm like eating out of season in Kentucky, yet it's local. So I'm like, yes, the best of both worlds. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I remember once upon a time working at the UK South Farm, doing some trials in some of the high tunnels and harvesting greens and root vegetables and other stuff, and for New Year's Day, and thinking, okay, yeah, there's something here, that there's some things that we can do, and stretching the limits of that. I'm curious. So you've had a lot of experience working across different groups of people, scales of people, different operations. Are there things that the people you're serving most now, challenges or approaches or whatever, that feel like kind of unique to them, or that's like kind of more common in that group? Or are they just kind of like everybody else, is just at a different scale?
Oh, that's a great question. One thing is labor for sure.
Mm.
And helping people think through, am I ready to hire somebody? And like everything that goes along with that. And I think a lot of people defer hiring because they think, oh, I'm going to have to do, W-2s. I'm going to have to do all these forms. It's going to be so complex.
And you're not growing, you're managing different kind of
Right,
thing.
right. And you're not nearly as nimble, right? Because like you can decide, oh, I'm going to go do this today and I'm going to get these things accomplished. And if you have an employee, then the planning is different, because you're like, okay, well, what do I need to do? What can I have them do? Do I train them to do it? Do I just, take care of it myself? So I think that's one thing, particularly with beginning growers and smaller scale, is kind of that labor thought process, and that do they make enough money to make it worth hiring somebody, or is that going to be all their profit going to pay someone else? And so I think that's and I wouldn't say it's unique. I mean, I think all our growers deal with labor in different ways, but I think that's something that's tough for small scale growers to really think about. When is it the right time to bring on an employee or multiple employees, and then like how do you do that, and like what are the logistics around that, and then like how do you find that person, and how do you train that person, how do you evaluate that person, all of those things that go into that. So I think it's similar, but it's different. So I think that for sure.
Yeah, well, something I'll say about that too. That I think there's some things in life or in business or in whatever that where like every one that you add is another additional set of responsibilities. There's some things though where the first one is the most painful by far, and then adding additional ones after that is and I was thinking about two examples we've talked about. One would be employees, where it's like if you have one employee, you have to have an HR system, you have to have some sort of payroll, you have to do these things. And if you add the second employee, you're going to add some responsibilities to yourself to figure out how to communicate with them, whatever. But all those other things have already been done. I was thinking also about high tunnels. If I have a high tunnel and I have to go out and open it on Christmas Day because the sun came out, well, if I have two high tunnels, it's not that much more work compared to, and it's just an interesting thing that beginning producers or smaller scale producers are facing the brunt of that initial getting up, getting up to speed, getting all these systems in place challenge that the beginning or the more advanced folks who are adding and scaling up, elements within it. I never really thought about it exactly in that way, but that was what kind of even just made me think of there. So anyway, I interrupted you, but that was, I that speaks to a lot of the folks. You're like, I have nothing, and I'm going to try to make something, as opposed to I have something and I'm going to try to make something better or something, a little bit more advanced.
Do you divide that up, Cindy, like in your mind or in your programming deliberately or not so much, as far as the production versus the management and the business side of things? Do you have any kind of logical tracks that you send people down, or you just kind of field it and then just kind of plug people into the resources that the university has needed?
Yeah, so because I'm a horticulturist, production is always what I focus
Yeah.
on, right?
It's the
And it's
fun
about
stuff, I think, for
the
me
plants
personally. It's
and
the production. Yeah.
for sure. But as I have matured, I have realized like it is not in a vacuum, right? Like you have to have all those other systems in place, and you have to have markets in place, because it doesn't matter how gorgeous what you're growing is or how wonderful it tastes. If you don't have a market for it, it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter. And
Yeah.
kind of the same thing too around record keeping, and yeah, that's not the glamorous part, but you got to do it. And so I hope that the growers I work with would say we strike a balance.
Hmm.
But sometimes it is really focusing in on the bottleneck, and it's really like doing that. That assessment of like what is the biggest pain point, what are they struggling with the most, and hitting that, even though it may be something that maybe I don't do or have expertise in. And then it may be like, okay, let's send them over to Brett to talk about market channels, and then like once they've mastered that and they're ready to come back and start talking production, then we would kind of flip, kind of not flip, but like approach it as a team versus, oh, I'm going to work with you until we get to this point, and then I'm going to hand you off. It really does kind of become more of like, okay, like you need to be talking to K-Card about a business plan. You need to be talking to the folks at CCD about, a really solid, marketing plan and those kinds of things. and like going along that journey with the person so that we can check in with them, seeing if they're doing okay, kind of a little bit of that accountability of like, oh, hey, did you update your business plan? Oh, hey, you said you were going to apply for a loan. Did you do that? Even though I wouldn't necessarily be helping them with it, but like taking that kind of holistic approach. I think we've got lots of examples of growers. I'm not going to call them out on here, but if they're listening, they're going to know I'm talking about them, that they've been able to make the biggest advances in their operations because we've taken this team approach. So I've been working with them, Hort Council's been working with them, Community Farm Alliance has been working with them, they've been working with CCD, they've been working with their local county extension agent, and it's really been that team effort, because not a single one of us, well, I'll speak for myself, maybe there's someone out there. I don't think any of us alone have all of the answers and all of the expertise. But man, when we come together as a team, we can really help push somebody forward, and we can get them where they want to be, and we can really provide great service to them, and help them really achieve their goals, because we each have different areas of expertise, and different ideas, thoughts, connections, and can really move a grower forward together that way, versus just them working alone with me. We're going to be great at some things, but other things we won't be nearly as good at, because that's not what I do. So.
There's so many specializations in horticulture, right? There is in all of plant and animal production across the board, row crops, whatever. But I was an ag agent before, and then when I became a horticulture agent and specifically worked with horticulture crops, I mean, it covers everything, like you said, from strawberries to sometimes mushrooms, and it a lot of times involves protected spaces where you have to worry about heating systems and water delivery systems, and you add all these specialized systems on top of the obvious business needs of dealing with things like labor and all the things that go along with that. But the complexities are kind of endless. But it's also an exciting time to be involved in all this, because the systems of monitoring, the systems, of putting a cover over something, all the systems are getting lots of technology, lots of advancements there. So it's a exciting time to be involved in that, but it's also a very challenging time when you're working with, with folks. And really, this is one of those scenarios to me, Cindy, that it kind of takes a village, because when they look at me, they're like, wait a minute, you're supposed to have all the answers. And I make a visit with somebody and they're doing something really cool, but at a high level, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That is not true. I need to talk to my irrigation expert and find out whatever I'm talking about. But it's exciting times. But I think the specializations just, keep rolling in our area as Kentucky kind of makes strides in horticulture production and marketing and scale and all the things that we're talking about today. But it's exciting, but boy, it takes a lot of specialties.
Oh, for sure. And I think the other really exciting thing is our consumers in Kentucky really drive local purchasing. We have a lot that do go to their farmers markets. They subscribe to CSA or, farm share programs. They are willing to do on-farm visits, go to agritourism locations, and really connect with growers. And that's something with the urban populations that's interesting, that they will go out and make farm visits. They'll go to and I don't want to call out any names because I will miss someone, but lots of agritourism locations around Kentucky that people can connect up with. And I mentioned the farmers market before, of you would have to work to not find one, right? I think we have 175 maybe ish in the state, and in almost every county's got a farmers market. That may not be convenient of the date you're looking for. They may not be open on Wednesday afternoons or something, but I think that our consumers in Kentucky really value that, and that's been I think a driver for advancement in the industry, is that people are meeting with their local growers and saying, hey, why aren't you growing watermelon radish? And then that grower thinks, well, maybe I should try that. And then they'll try a little something new. And so I think that that's been really exciting to see over the last several years, is kind of that idea about purchasing local and buying from, local producer, whether that's, ornamentals, or that's, food products, or, other types of artisan products that people have out there at different types of markets.
There's things that supported that, like the cottage laws and things, and home-based processing, microprocessing. And I've seen advancements just over time in Kentucky to do friendly legislation to support farmers markets and producers that are of a smaller scale and larger scale producers. So it's exciting to kind of see that add to the fabric that kind of makes up, horticulture in Kentucky. Some of those producer friendly, elements that are put into place. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is we get to talk to people and just sort of like ask their perspectives on things and just hear. It's time set aside to talk in a way that we normally don't. But so I have two questions. I have one that's a little bit more, what can we do differently or better, and another one that's a little bit more positive. I'll start with the first one. So if you had a magic wand that worked on the world of horticulture in Kentucky or in the region, where would you turn that magic wand to first in order to make changes that you would like to see for this industry, this community, etc.? Like, where would be some of the places that you would point your magic wand to make a change overnight or instantly?
Wow. So many. Do I only get 3 wishes? Is this like a
No,
rub the
no, no,
lamp
no. Just the
genie
first one, the
sort of
first couple
thing?
that come to mind. Yeah.
So I think pricing is one thing. That consumers, we tend to be very price conscious, and I wish that consumers, particularly those that don't have a farming background or understand like what it takes to bring a product to the marketplace, that they understood like what that true cost is, and we're super receptive to paying prices that really cover production costs plus a small profit for our growers. I think that would be one thing, is sort of this, I don't know, transparency in pricing or whatever, of like, well, no, really, this is what it costs to bring this product here. And there being the luxury of people being like, sure, I don't, $2 for a tomato, that's cheap. Let me pay you 3, that sort of thing. Like to me, that would be great if there was not that disconnect between kind of price, willingness to pay, and like what it really costs to bring something to market. I think that would be like the magic wand sort of thing, of like if there was a way to make that happen. That, and then it has surprised me, like not that I think, I mean, I don't subscribe to a plant-based diet only. I eat meat, all of that. But it surprises me how many people do not eat vegetables. That astounds me. that there are people who, I mean, how could you not eat a vegetable, right? Like, and I think about that of like, what would that meal look like that had 0 vegetables in it? And I would, include this to be like produce. And I wish that there was more, like that was easier for people, and that people were more excited and more interested and willing to take risks on certain vegetables that maybe aren't common to them. I guess that would be kind of the other thing, is like just the abundant produce for people to have, and be receptive to it. I think that would be another good thing. Yeah. But all the other things too, right? Like unlimited capital availability, lenders, that's kind of a struggle sometimes for horticulture operations to explain that to a lender.
Access to labor. Ooh.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like unlimited
capital, labor, all the things.
All the things, right? That's why I was asking, like, am I limited? But
unlimited wishes.
I mean, there's a lot of things that could be improved for sure within the whole, value chain.
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, it reflects what you were saying earlier, that you focus on the production stuff, but you have this broader thing that you first think about this like nexus of like the consumer purchasing decision as like this, mechanism, and as opposed to saying, I just really wish we had varieties that were more resistant to whatever. It's like, okay, that's another way
diseases,
That's right. That's interesting.
No Japanese beetles at all. Yeah.
My other question, which is a little bit more of a I don't know. I mean, that one was challenges, and this is more, as you think about your experience before, before this job in general, and then also within this job, if there's something about Kentucky horticulture, or the horticulture in general, maybe, that you wish people knew or could see or experience or have heard, that you've heard and seen, what would that be?
Mm-hmm. Well, a big thing is that about seasonality is that yeah, absolutely, we can produce 12 months of the year. That I wish that more people realize that, because when we do farm to school, that's one of the things we hear immediately is, well, we can't buy from growers because they only have it in the summer, and that's not 100% accurate. There are um, options year round, and I wish that people knew that a little bit more. And Ray touched on it before, of like just the diversity of horticulture. Like when you think of all of the plants that can be grown in Kentucky, all of the crops that can be grown, like we really have an abundance of options. And I think that sometimes our commodity folks don't appreciate that as much, of like they're focused on one crop, one animal system, and like we got to master a lot. We have so many different crops, market channels, like all the things. Like if you looked at the matrix, it is huge. And I wish that kind of our colleagues in agriculture appreciated that a little bit more. That horticulture isn't just cute, of like, oh, those are pretty flowers. That like, yeah, we produce a lot of nutritive value in fruits and vegetables. And that would be something of like people just realizing like just what the breadth of horticulture is. It's immense. When you look at native plants all the way through highly cultivated things. And like, I feel for horticulture agents, right? Like that you got to be able to answer questions on all that. You never know what the question is.
Sometimes my answer is, let me call Cindy, or let me call Rachel. Let me call somebody on campus. I'll get right back with you. Yeah, that's my answer.
Let me get back to you tomorrow. Yeah.
Takes a system. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, sometimes when I get into those agricultural audiences and they hear Center for Crop Diversification, they think about diversifying an operation means adding like winter wheat to your rotation. And I'm like, well, no, there's hundreds of specialty crops, and everybody wants to know the answer about the one that they're interested in. And it's going to take a second to get back onto you on about Malabar spinach, but we'll see what we can do.
Specifically, that one crop that no one has ever grown in Kentucky, which is exciting, but also a challenge sometimes. But keeps life interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I had a feeling we weren't going to get to houseplant propagation, and that gives us a good excuse to invite you back for another episode.
But I know, and I made all these notes, and I had all these talking points I wanted to cover.
Well, hold on to them, because we will plan to have you back, because people would definitely love to hear more about that as well. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and for being on the pod. Finally, we have some people. It's like, how have they not been on the pod yet? And you were definitely one of them. So we're glad to have you as a guest. To our audience, if you have not yet listened to me or Alexis beg you to leave us a rating or a like or a review, depending on where you're listening, please do that. Take 2 seconds to do that. It makes a big difference for us. You can email us. That'll be in the show notes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Hort Culture Podcast, and let us know what you want to hear next, or if you what episodes you've been enjoying lately, pictures of your garden. You can tag us as well. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Cindy, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.